Hello, and welcome to Ming Creative Arts interview series with Sean Hnedak. Welcome, Sean. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Sean is known for his plein air paintings. He's exhibited at galleries such as Gallery Nucleus, Sparks Gallery, Escondido's Municipal Gallery. And he does a lot of stuff with the plein air community, and you can see his brilliant work behind him here. Mostly landscapes, I believe, and murals.
Mhm.
And I believe you received your training at the USC Roski School of Art and Design, which I do a lot of work with students trying to get into similar programs. So I know it has like less than a 10% acceptance rate. Could you tell us a little bit about like your experience preparing a portfolio for that school? It must have been really difficult to get into, and just sort of what you put together that you think made you stand out.
Yeah. Thinking back on that, I remember that it was kind of challenging because I was very involved in rigorous academic study in high school, trying to study all of, you know, regular high school classes and doing as many AP classes and English and math and all that kind of stuff, but then also build an art portfolio. And I was really lucky to have a lot of art classes in high school, um, and had always been interested in art. So I had always kind of been working towards um, building a skill set, and building a portfolio. I think that, yeah, having a strong academic um, application as well as technical skill in your art, and then like critical thinking and having a lot of ideas behind your work. All three of those things kind of combine to really help if you're going to apply.
Right, because I believe you have to get into USC, and then after you get into USC, you also have to get into the art school, correct?
I think that's how it works. Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about how you used critical thinking and like some of the ideas that you put behind your portfolio?
Yeah, so I had done a illustration that I had entered into this Scholastic Art and Writing competition, that won a few awards and was like exhibited in Washington D.C. when I was in high school, and it was sort of like a tongue-in-cheek. It was called like Bad Chicks, and it was these little baby chicks hatching out of eggs, and they had like bats and stuff. Um, so, you know, just having a way to go beyond um, painting or drawing a photo, like it's really great to practice your technical skill, but really think about like your voice and who you are and what you have to say. That's what professors and admissions people are really curious about.
Could you tell us a little bit about your experience at this school, and how it differed from what you might see at just like a traditional UC school that has an art program? Because USC, I believe, has a dedicated school just for the arts, and there are like different variations and mediums you can major in.
Yeah, my program in particular was really open to working with a lot of different mediums. So I ended up doing a various amount of classes in photography, sculpture. I focused mainly on painting and graphic design. So I was able to kind of do both of those at the same time. When you go to a larger university, then you have access to other general education courses, and I was able to, study things about environmental science as well, and having kind of a community of people that are studying other majors is also very valuable for networking, I think. Um, Not just being in an art bubble per se.
Right. Did you end up using any of those connections that you made studying other things when you kind of, went out into the real world and were looking for paid work?
I think it can be really hard to transition from majoring in art to pursuing, uh, professional work, working in a corporate environment. So I think like it's really important to consider, are you going to work as a graphic designer or work in marketing, that sort of thing. I was able to really network a lot, which was helpful, and meet other people who either started their own businesses or worked for other companies. That helped with the job search.
Right. And it seems like your job search has been kind of all over the place. I saw that you worked for a trading card company producing illustrations for that. You've worked doing murals for companies such as the Hilton, and you've exhibited in a lot of really well-known galleries, like Gallery Nucleus, I know, works with like Pixar and Disney creators all the time. Could you tell me about your experience being freelance and also working with galleries?
Sure. So I think working with freelance can be really tricky. Personally, I find that that's best as like a complement to a full-time job. So I work full-time as a graphic designer now. Um, it is really fun to work freelance because there's so many different projects coming your way. Um, and you can really learn a lot about yourself and what kind of work you really want to do in a professional capacity because maybe you like to do things on your own, certain work, certain types of art, and then certain things for companies make more sense.
Um,
Um, go ahead.
No, could you tell me a little bit about your experience with various galleries and how you've gone about selling through galleries?
Yeah. So I think a really great way to get your feet wet, um, get your foot in the door with galleries is to apply for group shows. Those are where you have one piece and a larger um, ensemble of artists. So that is way easier to be a part of than trying to get some sort of solo show, which could be multi-year, a multi-year project. I've really enjoyed participating in those for the community aspect. I think it can be um, kind of an unreliable financial investment because you are traditionally giving away 50% to the gallery, which can be very expensive.
Hmm.
So I think it's important to kind of look at what are your goals with that. Does that help you build credibility, get your name out there, or are you trying to sell your work through social media, email list, um, art fairs, that sort of thing?
Right. And I believe most like group galleries are centered around a given theme. And then if you have art that fits that theme, you submit to an open call. What are some of the themes that you've exhibited with?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of small works shows that are based on like pieces that are either like a foot by a foot or smaller. So those are a great way to get started. Smaller pieces are easier to sell as well. I've also done a lot of, yeah, I've also done a lot of like landscape or plein air shows. So those are really fun because then you can meet other landscape painters. And if you live in the same area, then maybe you can all go paint together.
Yeah, and I know your plein air stuff is what you're known for, especially on Instagram, which is how I know you. How did you get into plein air painting and like how has your career evolved because of it?
Thank you. I think in one of my painting classes in college, we dabbled in it very shortly. And I just remember it being really fun. Um, I several years ago was doing some online classes and had received recommendation to study color through painting outdoors. And I've always really been interested in color and nature. So I really kind of just took it as I'm going to study color, and I just really enjoyed it, and have just kept on doing it ever since.
That's fantastic. It's funny how those like one class that you take, has such an influence on your career. I know that was similar with me in watercolor.
Mm,
Um, so as your plein air work has continued to evolve, I know you've been involved in a number of plein air events, and it seems like you're very involved with the plein air community. I see pictures of you painting with groups of plein air artists. As someone who is like deeply kind of entrenched in that world, how would you recommend artists who want to involve themselves more in the SoCal plein air community get started?
yeah, I think it's a very there's actually a lot of people who are into it. A lot of older retired folks that are taking up painting later in life or maybe making more time for it now. But there are young people as well. I've um, really discovered a lot of local groups through an app called Meetup. So I've used that before. And I found through that networking with other artists who do sketch groups or art meetups at museum sketching or meeting up at a park to paint together is really great. There's also a lot of great art organizations in Southern California. I've participated in groups put on by Warrior Painters, which is a group based in LA. There's also California Art Club, lots of different things.
That's awesome. So for artists who are interested in getting into plein air painting but aren't really sure where to start, because I know it's a different set of materials and things that you might need if you're taking stuff on the go and painting kind of out in nature. What are some basic supplies and practices you'd recommend to people who want to get into it? And what's something that you might need to bring or think about that people wouldn't necessarily expect?
Hmm. The number one supplies is sunscreen. I would also just recommend starting small. So, like, if you've never done it before, just bring your sketchbook and some, pen and ink or pencils and just draw. And then from there, you could probably move on to having like a small watercolor selection and trying to paint from there. I paint in oils, oops, which can be kind of tricky. Um, a lot of kind of supplies to haul in and out. Um, but yeah, I would just start there. If you have a tripod, you can get a tripod easel, and they have various things that people make, or you can buy them online. They're called like pochade boxes a lot of the time. So that's kind of a specific tool that will really help you.
Fantastic. And I know we're running short on time, so I just have one more question before we leave. But as someone who has a day job in a creative field and who does freelance and mural painting and all this creative stuff on the side, what advice would you give to young artists who are interested in studying fine art in college, but are worried about being able to make a career out of it?
My advice would be to really look at sort of things like this, look at people out there in the world and how they're um, creating a life that is supporting themselves, but also finding time to do their art. So whether it pays some of the bills, all the bills, or none of the bills, finding that time and really looking at like how other people have found success. So um, I would advise people to really talk to other artists and try to find people that are in the industries that you're curious about. It's so easy to just be asking friends or family who might not, as much as they're wishing you well, they just don't have any background or experience in the art world to know what's right or left. So trying to find people that might have more information would definitely help.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. I think so many people are hesitant to reach out to someone who seems successful, but like I've found that most artists that I've spoken to are just so open and friendly. Like it's not a super gate kept community, which is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sean. You guys can find Sean's work at Sean Hnedak, HNEDAK.com, or you can follow him on TikTok or on Instagram at Sean Paints. And we'll put some links in the description down below. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sean.
Thank you.